6. Dangerous signs of women with high spiritual intelligence. Vertical bar. Carl Jung's dark truth. What if the very women society fears most are the ones who carry the deepest truth? Carl Jung revealed that some women awaken a rare form of spiritual intelligence forged in the shadows, an intelligence so powerful it can heal, inspire, and create, but also manipulate, destroy, and terrify. In this video, we'll uncover the 6 dangerous signs of women with high spiritual intelligence and why they embody both the light and the darkness of the human soul. Part 1. The origin of darkness and the formation of high spiritual intelligence in women. When Carl Jung spoke of the human psyche, he never reduced it to simple mechanics of thought or shallow patterns of behavior. Instead, he saw the psyche as a living, dynamic ecosystem filled with symbols, unconscious drives, archetypal energies, and a constant tension between light and darkness. For women who carry high levels of spiritual intelligence, their power is rarely the product of comfort, safety, or social approval. It is almost always forged in the crucible of pain, shadow, and isolation. To understand the dangerous signs of such women, we must first analyze the origins of this intelligence and why it is so often intertwined with darkness. The Jungian foundation, shadow and anima. At the heart of Jung's depth psychology is the concept of the shadow. The shadow represents all the aspects of the self that are repressed, denied, or considered socially unacceptable. It contains impulses, instincts, and even strengths that society has labeled as dangerous or improper. For women with high spiritual intelligence, their relationship to the shadow is unusually intimate. They are not afraid to confront the parts of themselves that polite society demands they bury. In Jung's framework, the anima represents the inner feminine energy within men, but it also describes a woman's relationship with her own essence of femininity. While many women live their lives in alignment with social archetypes, the nurturer, the caregiver, the obedient daughter, those with spiritual depth often shatter these roles. Their anima becomes untamed, archetypally closer to figures like the witch, the priestess, or the prophetess. These are not women who exist to please, they exist to pierce through illusions. This process begins early. Many such women report that even in childhood, they had the uncanny ability to sense tension, lies, or unspoken truths within their families. They were often the ones to feel the undercurrents. Others ignored the silent resentment between parents, the hidden addictions, or the collective trauma passed down through generations. Jung would describe this as a heightened sensitivity to the collective unconscious, where archetypal patterns and unresolved psychological material are stored. Trauma as the forge of spiritual intelligence. One of the most striking observations in Jungian therapy is that suffering often awakens the psyche. Jung wrote extensively about how the wound becomes the opening through which the soul enters. Women with high spiritual intelligence are almost always acquainted with trauma. Whether it is betrayal, abandonment, emotional neglect, or abuse, their pain cracks open the walls of ordinary perception. Unlike those who numb themselves or deny their pain, these women are forced by their sensitivity to face it. They enter the underworld of their own psyche, where every shadow waits to be seen. This descent is archetypally mirrored in myths, such as Inanna's descent into the underworld or Persephone's abduction by Hades. In Jungian terms, it is the individuation process, the confrontation with darkness, that ultimately births wholeness. But this path is dangerous. Not every woman who confronts trauma emerges with wisdom. Some are consumed by bitterness, others by despair. The ones who transform suffering into spiritual intelligence are those who refuse to identify solely with victimhood. They learn to transmute their pain into insight, their loneliness into intuition, and their wounds into weapons of perception. This alchemical transformation is why their presence feels both powerful and unsettling to others. The cost of seeing too much. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Women of high spiritual intelligence embody this principle. They are not obsessed with light, love, and positivity in the shallow sense. They know that real growth comes from acknowledging what society fears. But this awareness carries a heavy cost. They see patterns others refuse to admit. They notice the falsity in people's smiles, the power games in social groups, the hypocrisy in institutions that preach morality while hiding corruption. This level of perception isolates them. Where others find comfort in conformity, they feel suffocated. Their awareness becomes a burden, making it difficult to participate in shallow conversations, blind obedience, or unquestioned traditions. Here lies the paradox. Jung pointed to awareness as liberation, but also alienation. The more conscious a woman becomes, the less she fits into the collective narrative. Society praises women for being gentle, agreeable, and accommodating, but a spiritually intelligent woman disrupts this. She challenges norms, questions motives, and resists being controlled. As a result, she is often feared, mischaracterized as arrogant, or accused of being too much. Individuation, the dance between light and darkness. In Jungian psychology, individuation is the process by which a person becomes whole by integrating unconscious material into consciousness. For women of spiritual depth, individuation is not an intellectual exercise, it is survival. They cannot ignore their shadows, because those shadows demand integration. Every repressed instinct or silenced truth surfaces in their dreams, their visions, their emotional breakdowns. These women become alchemists of the soul. They take their anger and transform it into boundaries. They take their grief and channel it into empathy. They take their intuition and shape it into wisdom. But individuation does not end in perfect peace. It creates a constant dialogue between light and darkness. A spiritually intelligent woman walks through life, knowing both her capacity for creation and her potential for destruction. This dual awareness is why they are often misunderstood as dangerous. People sense that they cannot be manipulated easily, nor can they be deceived without consequence. Their spiritual intelligence radiates authority, not the authority of force, but the authority of one who knows the depths of the human condition. Archetypes of the spiritually intelligent woman. In Jung's model of archetypes, women with high spiritual intelligence often embody paradoxical figures. The priestess, a mediator between the conscious world and the unconscious, able to translate dreams, symbols, and intuitions into guidance. The witch, feared for her knowledge of hidden powers, accused of manipulating unseen forces, but in reality, deeply in tune with psychic energy. The mother of shadows, a nurturer not of comfort but of truth. She does not shield people from pain but pushes them to confront it. The prophetess, a voice that speaks truths society denies, often persecuted for her refusal to conform. Each of these archetypes holds both light and dark aspects. The priestess can heal or mislead. The witch can empower or destroy. The mother of shadows can guide growth or smother freedom. The prophetess can awaken masses or drive them into fear. Jung insisted that archetypes are neutral. They are energy patterns that can manifest in both creative and destructive ways. For spiritually intelligent women, their danger lies not in what they are, but in how they navigate these archetypal energies. The social reaction, fear, and projection. Another key Jungian concept that applies here is projection. People often project their unacknowledged shadows onto others. A woman with high spiritual intelligence becomes a mirror in which others see what they deny in themselves. Her presence triggers discomfort. Men may project onto her the archetype of the seductress or witch, fearing her ability to see through their masks. Women may project envy, perceiving her as too powerful or detached. Institutions may project threat, labeling her as rebellious or unstable. This is why such women often experience resistance, isolation, or even persecution. They carry not only their own shadows, but also the projections of the collective unconscious. In Jung's terms, they become containers of collective darkness, unwillingly holding what others refuse to face. Part 2. The first and second dangerous signs, transcendent perception, and the peril of isolation. The first dangerous sign of women with high spiritual intelligence seen through the lens of Jung's depth psychology is their capacity for transcendent perception. They are not confined to the visible surface of reality. Instead, their minds operate as if they have direct access to the subterranean layers of the collective unconscious. This perception is not merely intuition in the shallow sense, nor is it simple emotional sensitivity. It is a heightened awareness of archetypal forces, hidden motives, and symbolic patterns in the lives of others. The second sign which inevitably follows is the peril of isolation. Once a woman develops this transcendent awareness, her ability to remain integrated within the ordinary fabric of society becomes precarious. She sees too much, feels too deeply, and thus experiences alienation as the price of her gift. The anatomy of transcendent perception. To analyze the first sign, we must begin with Jung's idea of the psyche as a multi-layered reality. The conscious mind interacts with the external world, but beneath it lies the personal unconscious memories, repressed desires, forgotten impressions. Beneath even that is the collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of shared human experiences encoded in archetypes. Women of high spiritual intelligence navigate all three layers effortlessly. They do not simply react to the present moment, they sense its hidden connections to the past, to myth, and to universal patterns of human behavior. For example, when speaking to someone, such a woman might immediately detect inconsistencies between their words and their emotional undertones. She may not only hear what is spoken, but also perceive the silences, the pauses, and the evasions. In Jungian terms, her perception bypasses the rational ego and draws upon the symbolic wisdom of the unconscious. Where most people interpret reality through cultural scripts and social conditioning, she reads life through archetypal motifs. She knows when someone is playing the role of the trickster, the victim, or the tyrant long before they reveal themselves explicitly. This transcendent perception can border on clairvoyance, though Jung would never frame it in supernatural terms. Instead, he would argue that such women are acutely attuned to unconscious communication, facial micro-expressions, bodily gestures, slips of the tongue, and symbolic imagery in dreams. Their spiritual intelligence sharpens this into a near-infallible ability to decode the hidden narratives of others. The archetypal seer and the burden of sight. Jungian archetypes offer a framework for understanding this perception. The archetype most aligned with this sign is the seer, or oracle, a figure present in every mythological tradition. The oracle is both revered and feared because she sees what others cannot bear to know. In Greek mythology, Cassandra is cursed to speak the truth but never be believed. In biblical tradition, prophets are often ridiculed or persecuted because their insights disrupt the comfort of collective ignorance. Women with transcendent perception carry this archetype into the modern world. They might not stand on temple steps proclaiming visions, but they detect lies in a boardroom, hypocrisies in a family, or manipulation in a relationship. Their insight often unsettles others because people prefer illusions that preserve their sense of control. To be in the presence of such a woman is to feel exposed. This exposure can awaken awe, but it more often evokes defensiveness. Here lies the danger. Transcendent perception destabilizes the collective. Jung observed that society thrives on a balance between conscious narratives and unconscious repression. If the unconscious were fully exposed, chaos would ensue. Spiritually intelligent women threaten this equilibrium simply by existing. Their very perception disrupts denial mechanisms, forcing others to confront truths they would rather keep buried. The psychological cost of seeing too much. Such perception, however, is not a source of unmitigated power. It exacts a psychological toll. Women who perceive too deeply often struggle with anxiety, insomnia, or emotional overwhelm. Jung would describe this as the ego being flooded by unconscious material. Normally, the unconscious reveals itself gradually through dreams, symbols, and life events. But for these women, the boundary between conscious and unconscious is thin. They receive more information than the psyche is comfortably designed to process. This overload often makes them appear restless, melancholic, or even unstable to outsiders. Yet what looks like instability is often the natural strain of carrying visions too heavy for one individual. Their transcendent perception gives them wisdom, but also burden. Jung compared the unconscious to the ocean. It nourishes life, but it can also drown those who swim too deep without preparation. Isolation as the second dangerous sign. Inevitably, the first sign gives rise to the second isolation. A woman who sees through illusions cannot easily participate in them. Social gatherings built on gossip or small talk feel hollow. Workplaces driven by political maneuvering or false loyalty become unbearable. Romantic relationships based on shallow attraction or denial of personal flaws collapse quickly under her scrutiny. Jung would argue that individuation, the path toward becoming one's true self, requires periods of isolation. One must separate from the collective to hear the voice of the unconscious. For spiritually intelligent women, however, this separation is not a choice but a compulsion. They are pulled away from collective illusions as a consequence of their sight. This withdrawal often earns them labels such as aloof, cold, or antisocial. In reality, their isolation is not a rejection of humanity, but a refusal to drown in its lies. The danger of isolation lies in its double edge. On one side, solitude becomes fertile ground for deep reflection, creativity, and spiritual insight. Many great mystics, artists, and thinkers cultivated their gifts in seclusion. On the other side, isolation can spiral into loneliness, bitterness, and despair. When a woman cannot find peers who understand her perception, she risks becoming trapped in her own mind, doubting her sanity or collapsing under the weight of alienation. Archetypal patterns of the isolated woman. The second sign resonates with archetypes of exile and outsider. Jung noted that every culture produces myths of banishment. Adam and Eve cast out of Eden, Prometheus chained to a rock, the wandering hermit in countless traditions. Spiritually intelligent women often embody this archetype of exile in their personal lives. They are pushed to the margins, not by force but by incompatibility with the dominant narrative. This exile, however, is not purely negative. In myth, the outsider often gains access to wisdom denied to the collective. Prometheus steals fire for humanity. Moses receives revelation in the wilderness. The hermit carries the lantern of truth. In Jungian analysis, exile represents the psyche's separation from collective unconsciousness, making room for deeper individuation. The woman in isolation becomes a vessel for insights that cannot emerge in the noise of society. The shadow of isolation. Yet the shadow side must not be ignored. Jung warned that prolonged separation from the collective could breed inflation, the belief that one is superior, chosen, or above ordinary humanity. Women with transcendent perception risk falling into this trap. Their isolation may lead them to cultivate a sense of elitism, seeing themselves as prophets among fools. While their insights are genuine, this inflation distorts them, turning wisdom into arrogance. Moreover, isolation can magnify the psyche's projections. Without others to provide feedback, the mind begins to spin its own narratives unchecked. A woman may mistake her own fears for divine revelations or interpret ordinary conflicts as cosmic battles. Jung described this as identification with the archetype, where the individual loses her grounding in reality and becomes possessed by the collective symbols she channels. The interplay of perception and isolation. The first two signs are inseparable. Perception drives isolation, and isolation sharpens perception. As she withdraws from society, the spiritually intelligent woman turns further inward, accessing deeper layers of the unconscious. This enhances her insights, but also deepens her separation from others. The cycle can become self-perpetuating, spiraling either into profound wisdom or destructive alienation. From Jung's perspective, the key to navigating this cycle is integration. The woman must learn to ground her transcendent perception in practical life, to share her insights without alienating others, and to balance solitude with connection. If she fails, the danger becomes real. Her gift isolates her, completely transforming her from a seer into a ghost haunting the edges of society. Symbolic illustrations. Consider the myth of Cassandra again. Her transcendent perception, seeing the fall of Troy, alienated her from her people. She spoke the truth, but her isolation rendered her powerless to change events. Her gift became her curse. This myth illustrates Jung's warning: perception without integration leads to tragedy. In modern contexts, spiritually intelligent women may find themselves in Cassandra's position. They warn friends about toxic relationships, but their warnings are ignored. They point out corruption in workplaces only to be silenced. They sense emotional truths in partners only to be dismissed as paranoid. Each rejection deepens their isolation, reinforcing the perception that no one can truly hear them. Psychological implications. Clinically, women who embody these signs often present with symptoms that resemble anxiety disorders, depression, or social withdrawal. Yet, beneath these diagnoses lies a deeper narrative, the psyche wrestling with the demands of transcendent perception. Jung would encourage not pathologizing them, but guiding them toward individuation. The task is not to suppress their sight or force them into shallow conformity, but to help them integrate their insights into a meaningful role. This integration might take the form of artistic expression, spiritual leadership, therapeutic practice, or intellectual contribution. By channeling their perception into constructive outlets, they transform isolation from curse into sanctuary. Without such outlets, however, the danger remains. Their perception corrodes their connection to the world, leaving them stranded in psychic exile. Part 3. The third and fourth dangerous signs: embracing the shadow and the hidden magnetism. The third dangerous sign of women with high spiritual intelligence is their ability to embrace the shadow rather than fear it. Unlike many who repress, deny, or project their darker impulses, these women turn toward the abyss and make it their ally. This does not mean they indulge every destructive urge, but rather that they acknowledge its presence and integrate it into their psyche. In Jungian psychology, this step is both liberating and perilous. The shadow contains raw instinct, unresolved trauma, and suppressed creativity. To embrace it is to unlock profound power, yet also to risk possession by forces larger than the ego can handle. The fourth sign emerges as a natural consequence: hidden magnetism. By facing their own darkness, such women develop a strange aura that draws others toward them, often against their will. This magnetism is not conventional beauty or charm, but a deeper archetypal allure. People sense that they embody something both forbidden and fascinating. This double-edged charisma can empower them or place them in dangerous positions of projection, obsession, and fear. The meaning of embracing the shadow. Jung defined the shadow as the totality of unconscious elements rejected by the conscious ego. Most individuals live their lives in denial of this aspect, striving to maintain a socially acceptable persona, but women of high spiritual intelligence are often incapable of such repression. Their sensitivity forces them to confront anger, jealousy, desire, grief, and rage that others hide. Instead of disowning these emotions, they learn to integrate them. This integration does not glorify darkness. It recognizes its role in the whole psyche. For example, anger becomes a tool for setting boundaries. Envy transforms into admiration that sparks growth. Grief opens the door to compassion. By acknowledging these impulses, women prevent them from festering in the unconscious, where they could erupt destructively. Jung argued that the gold is in the shadow, meaning that the very qualities we fear or reject often conceal our deepest strengths. For spiritually intelligent women, embracing the shadow means refusing to live a fragmented life. They are willing to see themselves as both nurturing and destructive, loving and ruthless, divine and animal. This wholeness grants them authenticity, but also makes others uncomfortable. Society prefers women to embody light, purity, and submission. A woman who openly carries both eros and thanatos, the instincts of love and death, appears dangerous because she refuses to be tamed. Archetypes of shadow integration. The third sign aligns with several archetypal figures in Jung's framework, the dark goddess. In myths from Kali and Hindu tradition to Lilith, in Jewish lore, dark goddesses embody chaos, destruction, and dark goddesses, liberation. A spiritually intelligent woman resonates with this archetype when she refuses to hide her power or rage. The alchemist transforming lead into gold is a metaphor for turning suffering into wisdom. Such women practice psychological alchemy by transmuting shadow impulses into creative and spiritual insight. The wounded healer borrowed from the myth of Chiron, this archetype reflects those who use their own wounds as sources of healing for others. By embracing their pain, they gain authority to guide others through darkness. Each of these archetypes contains both danger and brilliance. The dark goddess may inspire empowerment, but also fear. The alchemist may create transformation or descend into obsession. The wounded healer may save others but neglect herself. Women who embody these energies live on the razor's edge of balance. The perils of shadow intimacy. Embracing the shadow is liberating, but it is not without risks. Jung warned of the danger of shadow possession, where unconscious material overwhelms the ego. A woman who confronts her anger may suddenly find herself consumed by it. One who acknowledges her erotic power may slip into manipulation. One who faces grief may drown in despair. The danger arises because the shadow is not a tame animal but a wild force. To engage it requires strength, humility, and constant self-awareness. Spiritually intelligent women often walk this line daily. They know the shadow cannot be denied, but they also know it cannot be given free rein. This tension creates an inner intensity visible to others even when unspoken. Society tends to misinterpret this intensity. A woman who acknowledges her shadow may be labeled as dangerous, unstable, or immoral. Her authenticity disrupts collective repression. While others cling to illusions of purity or control, she demonstrates that true power comes from wholeness, not denial. This confrontation with hypocrisy often provokes hostility, further isolating her while deepening her inner authority. Hidden magnetism. The aura of integrated power. The fourth sign, hidden magnetism, flows directly from shadow integration. When a woman accepts both her light and dark aspects, she radiates authenticity. People are drawn to her not because she conforms to ideals of beauty or politeness, but because she embodies wholeness. Jung described individuation as the alignment of the self with the totality of the psyche. Those who achieve it exude a presence that feels archetypal. Others sense this presence unconsciously. They cannot explain why they are fascinated, but they feel it. The integrated woman becomes a mirror in which others glimpse their own denied shadows. This both attracts and terrifies. Men may be captivated by her because she awakens their anima, the inner feminine they repress. Women may feel drawn to her confidence while simultaneously threatened by her refusal to conform. In groups, she may command respect without speaking, simply by embodying unapologetic authenticity. This magnetism is dangerous because it is not under her control. It emerges from the unconscious and radiates outward, pulling projections onto her. People project fantasies of savior, seductress, mother, or witch. Each projection distorts her reality, trapping her in roles she did not choose. Jung noted that projections are inevitable, but they become dangerous when neither side recognizes them. A spiritually intelligent woman becomes the unwilling container of collective desires and fears. Archetypes of magnetism. The hidden magnetism of these women aligns with several archetypes. The witch feared for her mysterious knowledge, accused of using secret powers. Historically, women who embodied intuition and shadow integration were often branded witches because of their magnetic presence. The muse inspiring artists, leaders, or lovers, not by intention, but by the archetypal energy she carries. Her presence evokes creativity in others. The siren, a figure from myth who lures with irresistible allure. Though often demonized, the siren represents the danger of unconscious attraction. The queen, commanding respect simply by being, not by demanding. Her magnetism reflects inner sovereignty. Each archetype reflects projections cast upon her. The witch may be hunted, the muse idealized, the siren vilified, the queen envied. The danger lies in her loss of individuality beneath the weight of collective fantasies. The double-edged sword of charisma magnetism can empower but also entrap. On the positive side, it grants influence. Women with this aura can lead, inspire, and heal. People listen to them, follow them, and trust their guidance. On the negative side, magnetism draws envy, obsession, and hostility. Others may attempt to control, possess, or destroy what they cannot understand. In relationships, this charisma often complicates intimacy. Partners may idealize the woman, placing her on a pedestal she cannot sustain. When she inevitably reveals her humanity, disappointment follows, sometimes violently. In professional settings, colleagues may perceive her as a threat or accuse her of manipulation simply because of her presence. In communities, she may be simultaneously revered and ostracized. Jung emphasized that charisma rooted in the unconscious carries archetypal weight. The individual is seen not for who she is, but for the symbols she embodies. This can inflate her sense of self, tempting her to identify with the archetype rather than her individuality. If she begins to believe she is a goddess, witch, or prophetess in literal terms, she risks losing balance and succumbing to archetypal possession. The psychological impact of being magnetic, living with hidden magnetism, is psychologically taxing. Constant projection forces these women to manage not only their own psyche, but also the psychic material of others. They become the screens onto which people cast unresolved desires and fears. This can lead to exhaustion, disorientation, and resentment. For example, a woman may find strangers confiding in her without reason, sensing her depth. Others may fall in love with her based on fantasy rather than reality. Friends may compete with her or accuse her of arrogance when she simply embodies her truth. Each interaction requires discernment. Is this about me or about their projection? Without strong boundaries, she risks drowning in others' unconscious material. Therapeutically, Jung would advise such women to cultivate awareness of projection dynamics. They must learn to recognize when they are carrying others' shadows and to return that material rather than internalize it. Otherwise, their magnetism becomes a burden rather than a gift. The interplay of shadow and magnetism. The third and fourth signs are inseparable. By embracing the shadow, women unlock authenticity. By radiating authenticity, they become magnetic. This interplay is both empowering and perilous. Their depth inspires awe but also fear. Their magnetism grants influence but invites persecution. The more fully they embody integration, the more they embody paradox, healer and destroyer, muse and witch, queen and exile. In Jung's terms, this paradox is inevitable. The psyche is not meant to be one-sided. To embrace wholeness is to embody opposites. The spiritually intelligent woman becomes a living symbol of this integration. She demonstrates that humanity contains both light and darkness, creation and destruction, love and fear. Her magnetism is therefore not personal but archetypal, a reflection of the collective unconscious made visible. Symbolic illustrations, myth and literature abound with figures who illustrate these signs. Medea, though demonized, embodied shadow integration and magnetism, wielding both wisdom and destructive rage. Inanna, descending into the underworld, embraced her shadow and returned with greater power. In modern culture, charismatic women who challenge norms often face both adoration and vilification. They are called visionaries by some, witches by others. These examples highlight the timeless pattern: when a woman integrates her shadow, she transcends the roles society offers. This transcendence generates magnetism, but it also provokes fear in those who remain bound by repression. Psychological implications. Clinically, women embodying these signs may present with paradoxical traits: confidence mixed with vulnerability, charisma mixed with exhaustion, wholeness mixed with conflict. Jungian analysis would not pathologize these contradictions, but recognize them as signs of individuation. The task is to maintain balance, preventing shadow integration from slipping into possession and magnetism from inflating the ego. Healthy practices include self-reflection, creative outlets, grounding rituals, and relationships with those who respect their authenticity without projecting onto them. Without these anchors, the danger becomes real. Shadow intimacy may devolve into obsession, and magnetism may attract destructive relationships. Part 4. The fifth dangerous sign: emotional intelligence and the manipulation of the unconscious. The fifth dangerous sign of women with high spiritual intelligence lies in their extraordinary emotional intelligence and the subtle, often unconscious ability to manipulate the emotions of others. In Jungian psychology, emotional intelligence is not simply the modern notion of empathy or the ability to manage one's own feelings. Instead, it is a profound sensitivity to the currents of the unconscious that move through individuals and groups. Women who embody this sign can sense, interpret, and influence the invisible dynamics beneath human interactions. While this ability can heal, it can also destabilize, for the line between guidance and manipulation is perilously thin. The nature of emotional intelligence. In Jungian terms, Carl Jung did not use the phrase emotional intelligence, but his concepts point directly to it. His exploration of the unconscious projection archetypes and the process of individuation all highlight the role emotions play in shaping human experience. Jung insisted that the unconscious communicates not only through images and dreams, but also through affect, intense, often unexplainable feelings that grip us with archetypal force. For women with high spiritual intelligence, their attunement to these emotional signals is heightened. They can feel the anxiety in a room before anyone speaks, detect resentment beneath polite conversation, or sense longing in a person who has never confessed it. This emotional perception operates as a kind of radar scanning for unspoken truths. It is not merely psychological intuition, but a connection to the collective unconscious where archetypal emotions reside. This sensitivity grants them enormous power. They understand what motivates people on a primal level: fear, desire, shame, guilt, love. They know how emotions, color perception, and decision-making. In this sense, their intelligence is not limited to the rational but encompasses the entire psyche. Yet power over emotion is power over the very core of human existence, which makes this sign dangerous. Archetypes of the emotionally intelligent woman. Jung's archetypes illuminate the dual nature of this sign. The healer. She perceives wounds others hide and provides the emotional resonance needed for healing. Her presence calms, nurtures, and guides. The sorceress. She knows the power of emotional energy and can direct it intentionally or not to influence others. She may seduce, inspire, or terrify through emotional suggestion. The mother. In her light form, she offers unconditional love. In her dark form, she manipulates through guilt or overprotection. The trickster. Using emotion as misdirection, she destabilizes others' certainty, forcing them to confront hidden truths. Each archetype demonstrates how emotional intelligence can heal or harm. The healer restores, but the sorceress ensnares. The mother nurtures, but the dark mother suffocates. The trickster liberates, but also confuses. Spiritually intelligent women carry all these potentials, often without consciously choosing them. Emotional resonance as a tool of influence. The central feature of this sign is emotional resonance, the ability to match, reflect, and amplify the emotional states of others. Jung described resonance in terms of unconscious contagion. Emotions spread like wildfire because they carry archetypal energy. For example, fear can ripple through a crowd faster than reason can contain it. A spiritually intelligent woman senses this dynamic instinctively. She knows when to mirror someone's feelings, to create intimacy, when to remain calm, to de-escalate conflict, and when to amplify passion to inspire action. This ability can manifest in countless ways. a teacher who motivates students by recognizing their insecurities and transforming them into curiosity, a leader who rallies a community by naming the collective grief no one dares voice, a lover who awakens hidden desires in a partner by intuiting what they long for. But the danger lies in how easily resonance becomes manipulation. When a woman understands how emotions drive behavior, she can exploit this knowledge consciously or unconsciously. She may use guilt to control seduction, to ensnare fear, to dominate, or compassion to disarm. Jung would see this as the shadow of emotional intelligence, the descent from authenticity into exploitation. Manipulation of the unconscious. Manipulation in Jungian terms occurs when someone leverages unconscious material in others without their awareness. This is not simply persuasion, it is influence that bypasses the rational ego and taps directly into archetypal forces. Spiritually intelligent women, by virtue of their sensitivity, can do this naturally. For instance, by recognizing a man's unacknowledged anima, she may evoke emotions in him that he cannot control. By sensing a friend's unresolved father wound, she may unconsciously take on the role of nurturer or punisher, altering the friend's behavior. By detecting collective anxiety in a group, she may speak in ways that channel or redirect it. Jung stressed that the unconscious is highly susceptible to suggestion. Dreams, symbols, and emotions bypass logical defenses. Women who wield emotional intelligence become living symbols embodying archetypes that activate unconscious material in others. This activation can be healing when it fosters individuation, but it can be manipulative when it keeps others trapped in dependency or projection. The fine line between healing and control. The most dangerous aspect of this sign is its ambiguity. Healing and manipulation often look identical from the outside. A therapist uses empathy to guide a patient toward growth, while a manipulator uses empathy to trap someone in dependence. Both require the same skill, deep understanding of another's emotions. For spiritually intelligent women, the challenge is to discern their own motives. Are they using emotional resonance to empower others or to control them? Are they guiding someone toward integration or feeding on their vulnerability? Jung would caution that unconscious motives often distort even the most well-intentioned actions. Without relentless self-examination, the healer can become the sorceress, the mother, the tyrant, the guide, the deceiver. This danger is compounded by projection. Others often project their unconscious needs onto such women, making them targets for transference. A man may project the archetype of the savior or lover, giving her emotional control she never sought. A community may project the archetype of the prophetess, investing her words with power beyond her intention. To navigate this, she must constantly ask, am I leading with authenticity, or am I being carried by the projections of others? Emotional power in relationships. In intimate relationships, this sign manifests intensely. A spiritually intelligent woman perceives her partner's deepest emotional needs often before the partner is aware of them. She knows when he is hiding fear, when he craves affirmation, when he feels shame. This sensitivity allows her to nurture with precision, creating profound intimacy. But it also allows her to control. She may withhold affection to punish, offer comfort to manipulate, or awaken desire to bind. Jung would frame this dynamic in terms of anima and animus projections. The partner projects his unconscious feminine anima onto her, giving her disproportionate influence over his psyche. She, aware of this projection, may consciously or unconsciously use it to direct the relationship. The danger is that intimacy becomes a stage for unconscious manipulation rather than mutual growth. Emotional power in groups and society. Beyond personal relationships, emotional intelligence extends to groups. Spiritually intelligent women often become natural leaders even without formal authority. Their ability to articulate collective emotions gives them influence. They may express grief after a tragedy, hope in despair, or outrage at injustice, speaking words that resonate deeply. This power mirrors the archetype of the prophetess or the oracle. People listen not because of logic, but because of emotional truth. Yet once again, the line between guidance and manipulation blurs. History is filled with charismatic figures who used emotional resonance to inspire revolutions, religions, or movements. Some uplifted humanity, others led it into destruction. Jung observed that the unconscious of groups is especially vulnerable to suggestion. A single individual embodying archetypal energy can ignite collective hysteria or inspiration. Spiritually intelligent women embodying emotional archetypes may unintentionally trigger mass responses. Their responsibility is immense for their words, and actions carry weight far beyond their intention. Archetypal shadows of emotional manipulation. Every archetype carries a shadow. For emotionally intelligent women, the shadows include the enchantress, using allure and empathy to trap others in dependency, feeding on their devotion. The tyrant mother, using guilt, obligation, or sacrifice to control rather than nurture. The false prophetess, exploiting collective emotions for personal gain, speaking not truth but what maintains power. These shadows reveal the danger of emotional intelligence. What begins as sensitivity can devolve into domination. What begins as guidance can devolve into control. Jung emphasized that recognizing these shadows is essential for individuation. Without awareness, the woman risks becoming possessed by the archetype, losing her humanity in the process. The psychological burden living with such power is not easy. Spiritually intelligent women often wrestle with guilt, questioning whether their influence is healing or manipulative. They may withdraw out of fear of harming others, or they may overcompensate by denying their power altogether. Some may succumb to inflation, believing they are saviors, and in doing so fall into archetypal possession. The psychological burden is compounded by constant projection. Others seek them out for emotional comfort, draining them. They become therapists, mothers, or muses to everyone, leaving little space for their own needs. Jung warned that when the unconscious is not consciously managed, it consumes the individual. Women with this sign must therefore practice strong boundaries, balancing empathy with self-preservation. Symbolic illustrations, myth, and literature illustrate this dynamic vividly. Circe, the sorceress of Greek myth, used emotional and magical power to enthrall men. Medea, both healer and destroyer, embodied the peril of emotional manipulation. In biblical tradition, Delilah used emotional intimacy to control Samson, blending love with betrayal. These figures symbolize the archetypal danger of emotional intelligence unchecked by integration. In modern life, spiritually intelligent women may not wield potions or prophecies, but their influence is just as potent. They are the partners who can break someone with a single withdrawal of affection, the leaders who can ignite passion with a single speech, the healers who can guide or mislead with a single empathetic word. Their danger lies not in their existence, but in the unconscious misuse of their gift. Clinical implications. From a Jungian therapeutic perspective, the task is integration. A woman must become aware of her power without being consumed by it. She must differentiate authentic empathy from manipulative resonance. She must recognize projections and return them to their source, rather than embody them unconsciously. This requires relentless self-reflection, humility, and grounding in her individuality rather than her archetypal roles. Healthy outlets for this energy include therapy, art, writing, spiritual leadership, or activism arenas, where emotional resonance can uplift rather than exploit. Without outlets, the energy may implode, manifesting as depression, anxiety, or destructive relationships. Jung would insist that her individuation depends on navigating this sign consciously, lest it become her downfall. Part 5. The sixth dangerous sign: creative destructive power and the process of individuation. The sixth dangerous sign of women with high spiritual intelligence is their extraordinary capacity to channel both creation and destruction through the same psychic energy. In Jung's depth psychology, the unconscious does not separate neatly between constructive and destructive drives. Both are intertwined, woven into the archetypal energies that move the human psyche. Women who achieve profound spiritual depth embody this paradox. They can generate astonishing creativity, art ideas, healing, transformation, but the same force can also manifest as destruction, chaos, or annihilation. The danger lies in the indivisibility of these polarities. To wield one is to risk unleashing the other. The archetypal roots of creative destructive energy. Jung insisted that archetypes are inherently ambivalent, carrying light and shadow simultaneously. No figure illustrates this more clearly than the Great Mother archetype. In her light form, she nourishes, protects, and gives life. In her dark form, she devours, smothers, and annihilates. Spiritually intelligent women often resonate with this archetype. They hold the capacity to give life in many forms: children, art, vision, or movements, but they also carry the shadow of withdrawal, rage, or destruction. Mythological traditions reinforce this pattern. Hinduism venerates Kali, goddess of both creation and destruction, who slays demons while dancing in ecstasy. Greek mythology presents Gaia, mother of life, but also source of wrath when violated. Jung would argue these figures are not literal deities, but archetypal images of psychic forces. Women who embody high spiritual intelligence manifest these forces in everyday life, often unconsciously. Creativity as psychic overflow. Jung described creativity as the psyche's attempt to express unconscious material through symbolic form. Art, music, literature, and even problem-solving emerge when unconscious energies demand representation. Spiritually intelligent women often find themselves compelled to create. Their insights into human nature, their intimacy with shadow, and their sensitivity to archetypal images pour into creative expression. This creativity is not superficial. It carries depth, mystery, and power. Their paintings may disturb as much as they inspire. Their words may heal while also unsettling. Their inventions may challenge societal structures. In Jungian terms, their creativity is archetypal, resonating with the collective unconscious. People respond not only to the surface product, but to the deep symbolic truth embedded within it. But creativity of this magnitude comes at a price. It can overwhelm ordinary life, demanding isolation, obsession, or sacrifice. Many spiritually intelligent women report feeling like vessels rather than authors of their creations, as though something larger moves through them. Jung called this participation mystique, the state in which the ego feels fused with archetypal forces. It produces genius but also risks possession. Destruction as the shadow of creativity. Just as creation springs from the unconscious, so too does destruction. Jung observed that psychic energy is neutral. It can manifest as healing or harm, depending on how it is integrated. Women of high spiritual intelligence who fail to channel their energy constructively may turn it inward, leading to depression, self-sabotage, or illness. Or they may turn it outward, unleashing rage, manipulation, or chaos in relationships and communities. This destructive potential is not accidental. It is the flip side of the same archetypal force. The same intensity that produces great art can also burn bridges. The same insight that heals can also cut mercilessly. The same charisma that inspires can also dominate. Spiritually intelligent women live at the intersection of Eros, life force, and Thanatos, death drive. To embody one without acknowledging the other is impossible. Their danger is precisely this: the impossibility of separating creation from destruction. Individuation and the integration of opposites. For Jung, the ultimate task of the psyche is individuation, the integration of opposites into a coherent whole. Women with high spiritual intelligence stand at the frontier of this process because they embody polarity so vividly. Their creativity and destructiveness are not signs of pathology, but of individuation in progress. By holding both energies without identifying exclusively with either, they approach wholeness. Yet individuation is never safe. It requires confronting the shadow, resisting inflation, and tolerating tension between contradictions. Spiritually intelligent women must learn to recognize when their creative energy slips into destructive patterns and vice versa. They must cultivate discernment when to create, when to destroy, when to nurture, when to withdraw. Failure to integrate leads to imbalance, either drowning in chaos or suppressing vitality. Jung compared this process to alchemy, turning base metals into gold through fire. The alchemical fire is both destructive and transformative. It burns away impurities but can also consume the vessel if uncontrolled. Women embodying this sign are alchemists of the psyche, constantly transmuting energy while risking immolation. Archetypes of creation-destruction. Several archetypes illustrate the sixth sign, the creator manifesting visions, art, or new worlds. Her danger lies in obsession, losing herself in her creations. The destroyer clearing space for renewal by dismantling illusions, structures, or relationships. Her danger lies in annihilation for its own sake. The phoenix burning in her own fire only to rise again. Her cycles of self-destruction and rebirth inspire but also destabilize. The great mother life-giver and death-bringer, nurturing or devouring depending on her integration. These archetypes remind us that creation and destruction are not enemies but twins. Spiritually intelligent women channel them both, often embodying multiple archetypes at once. Their magnetism derives from this paradox: they are life itself with all its beauty and terror. Social reaction to creative destructive women. Society rarely tolerates such paradox comfortably. Women who create are celebrated, but when their creativity disrupts norms, they are vilified. Women who destroy illusions or structures are feared, accused of hysteria, witchcraft, or rebellion. Spiritually intelligent women who embody both creation and destruction provoke ambivalence, admired as visionaries, condemned as threats. Historically, such women have often been silenced. Mystics whose visions challenged authority were burned or exiled. Artists whose work revealed too much truth were censored. Leaders who inspired transformation were demonized. Jung would argue this reaction is projection. Society fears its own unconscious and attacks those who embody it visibly. Psychological burden of the sixth sign. Living with creative destructive power is exhausting. Women may feel torn between impulses to nurture and impulses to burn everything down. They may oscillate between producing masterpieces and sabotaging their own success. They may inspire devotion but also provoke hatred. The psyche strains under the tension of opposites, producing mood swings, inner conflict, or existential despair. Jung encouraged individuals in this state to cultivate symbolic living, to channel archetypal energy into symbolic expression rather than literal enactment. For example, channeling destructive impulses into art rather than relationships, or transforming grief into poetry rather than collapse. By giving symbolic form to unconscious energy, the individual achieves balance without repression. Symbolic illustrations. The myth of the phoenix perfectly captures the sixth sign. The bird bursts into flames only to rise renewed from its ashes. This cycle of creation and destruction mirrors the psychic life of spiritually intelligent women. Their relationships, careers, or inner identities may repeatedly collapse and regenerate. To outsiders, this looks chaotic. To Jung, it is the psyche's attempt at renewal. Another example lies in the myth of Demeter and Persephone. Demeter, goddess of fertility, withholds harvest when her daughter is taken, embodying both creation and destruction in her grief. Spiritually intelligent women similarly embody paradox, capable of giving abundance, but also of withholding it as an act of power. Clinical implications. In therapeutic contexts, women who embody this sign, often present as highly creative yet unstable, oscillating between inspiration and despair. Jungian analysis would not pathologize these cycles, but view them as archetypal. The task is to help the woman recognize the polarity within her and channel it constructively. Practical integration may involve artistic expression, ritual, or spiritual practice. The goal is not to eliminate destructive impulses, but to transform them into renewal. For example, ending a toxic relationship may feel destructive but is necessary for growth. Quitting a job may feel chaotic but clears space for authentic vocation. By reframing destruction as part of creation, the woman aligns with individuation, the dangerous gift. The sixth sign, then, is not merely a trait, but a destiny. Spiritually intelligent women embody the paradox of life and death, creation and destruction. Their power is dangerous because it destabilizes ordinary categories. People cannot predict whether they will heal or harm, inspire or unsettle. Their gift is to embody wholeness, but their danger is to be consumed by the very forces they channel. For Jung, such women represent the cutting edge of individuation. They show humanity what it means to embrace the totality of the psyche. Yet they also reveal the cost of such wholeness: isolation, projection, misunderstanding, and the constant risk of collapse. Their presence challenges others to face their own unconscious, which is why they are both revered and feared. Carl Jung believed that those who walk closest to their shadow also walk closest to their true self. Women with high spiritual intelligence carry a power that is both creative and destructive, magnetic and isolating, healing and dangerous. If you've seen yourself in these signs, remember your task is not to suppress this energy, but to integrate it. Because only when the light and the shadow are embraced together does true individuation begin. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep psychological insights. And let me know in the comments, do you recognize these signs in yourself or in someone close to you?